Hey everybody, welcome back to a Millennial's Guide to Real Estate Investing. Today I'm with Zach Hoerth. He's a real estate investor out of Indianapolis. He started with single family, fix and flips, selling to homeowners, and now he is in the apartment building space buying multifamilies. He actually did a 1031 from a couple of flips into a larger building, which got him started with multifamily. So thanks so much for coming on the show, Zach, and thanks for reaching out to me.
Well, hey, I appreciate it. Like I said, I came across your Instagram profile. Somebody sent it to me like, "Hey, this kid's doing something similar to what you're doing." I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." So, yeah, thank you for the introduction. But yeah, that's kind of how I fell into it. So I was originally going to school in Florida at a school called Florida Gulf Coast University, and I got my real estate license that I was going to sell million dollar houses on the beach, and ended up doing a bunch of leasing to college kids. And what I realized was some of these owners were making, $3,600, $4,000 a month on some of these single families just for owning a house. Man, I'm on the wrong side of this. So I eventually ended up deciding moving back to Indianapolis, where I'm like, hey, I can start buying houses here for $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 and either renting them out or flipping them. So that's what I did. Moved back, started partnering with family friends, and that's how I got into the raising private money, if you will.
Yeah.
That kind of escalated into, hey, picked up a couple single family rentals, decided to do a couple flips, and things were going well. And this was in, I think, about May of 2017 when we decided to sell everything. I'm like, man, the market's hot. Let's put on, these kind of crappier rentals on for double what we paid for them and see what happens. Well, all of them sold for close to double what we paid. And the people I was investing with, they were like, oh my gosh, like what's the next deal? We can't believe that this is happening. And I thought it was a big deal because some of these people were giving me, $20,000 and $30,000. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a ton of money.
Yeah.
And so that's what I ended up doing. And then last summer, 1031 to that apartment complex. And that was a little bit scary because I'd never done multifamily before. And some people, they'll jump in and do like a duplex or 4-unit, but the 10 unit was a good one to cut my teeth on.
Yeah.
And once I was able to kind of prove the concept of renovating, raising rents, that whole deal, I was like, all right, well, I need to do more of this.
Yep.
So I just saw the income potential so much larger when you have more doors under one roof. And it just made more sense for me. And doing that, I was able to raise more private money and get some of these other multifamilies under contract.
That's awesome. And then, so you're 22 years old today, right?
Yep.
And then you started this about 4 years ago, then 3 years ago, right? So you were 19.
Yeah. So I think that was got my license like 19. I think I bought my first house like 19 or just after I turned 20.
Got it. And then how'd you learn about real estate or even get interested in it? Was it really through that leasing thing, or did you see some other real estate thing that made you think, oh, I need to be the investor really?
The very first interaction I had with real estate was when I was growing up. I'm sure there's a lot of stories like this. A dad or a grandpa or somebody along the line had some rentals, and that's exactly what had happened to me. And so, when I was in 7th and 8th grade, I remember waking up early on the weekends and having to go paint or clean up trash in some of these rental houses. And I absolutely hated it. I thought it was the worst thing ever. And so I was like, there's no way in hell I'm going to be doing this for the rest of my life. But once I got into school, I had planned on going to med school and just doing the whole doctor route. I'm like, man, this is not for me. So I started to realize what my grandpa had built, what my dad had started to get into. And they sold it before I got into college. They just had a couple single families. They had sold them before I got into college. But I started to realize, I'm like, man, they could have really built a huge portfolio for themselves had they have gone more into multifamily. And so they've been surging and getting into multifamily, especially with that first 10 years. So it was kind of cool to partner with them on that and see their perspective start to change a little bit aside from just the single family. I think a lot of people think there's so many barriers to entry on the multifamily, which don't get me wrong, there are. But once you start to get the hang of it, it starts to become a little easier.
Yeah, I agree. So tell me about that first deal. How did you find it? How did it go down? What was the goal? And then especially raising money, because I started kind of the same age as you. So I was 19, 20 years old, and I was raising money. I was still in college, but I was networking my ass off here in LA and raising money from people and stuff like that. I didn't really have any friends or family that invested with me, except for my dad. My dad had some money saved up, so that's how we funded the first deal. But then after that, it was all like me going and just meeting random people on biggerpockets.com face to face and raising money. So how did you go about it? and that first deal, how'd it go?
So I remember because at the time, I think I had like six or maybe $8,000 saved up. So not very much at all. And they knew that I was moving back simply to like start, get my feet wet in real estate. And so they're like, hey, here's our budget. I think they had like, this is my mom and dad at the time. They're like, hey, we'll help you out with, $30,000. And I'm like, okay, well, we could get something. And I don't know how nice, but anyways, I ended up probably looking at 20 to 30 houses. And at the time I was having to go back through the real estate course because I was licensed in Florida, but Florida doesn't mutually recognize licenses in Indiana. So I had to go back through all the courses to get my license here. I just felt like, hey, as I finish up school, it'll be something to have for me that will allow me to generate some income outside of just picking up rentals and flips. So that's what I was doing. I ended up finding a property. I think it was listed like, I don't know, 35,000 or something. And it was on the west side of Indianapolis. And this landlord had a bunch of these single family rentals that looked like tenants trashed, and he had put a bunch of money back into it in terms of renovating, and he was just done. He was like, I want to sell it, I'm out. So I was able to kind of beat him down on price and ended up buying it for $28,000. At the time, I didn't have that money. So I went to them and said, hey, here's what we're gonna have to do. Luckily we didn't have to, we literally put $0 in for renovation. It was move-in ready. It was a little 2-bedroom, 1-bath. I think it was like 725 square feet. And like, all right, well, you gotta form the LLC. This is in your, you wanted to do this. So they kind of gave me the reins, if you will. So we closed on it, and I'm like, all right, well, so I found myself at Lowe's, get a rent sign, write my number on there, stuck it in the yard, and within a couple of days had it rented. So it was cool because it was kind of like an anomaly. We rented this place. I didn't know anything about screening tenants at the time, and they just kind of let me go. But I rented to a family for $800 a month, if you can believe that, on a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, $800 a month, or for 3 months, and then re-signed them on a year lease at $650. So like the ROI on that, they just couldn't believe that was happening. So that's kind of what motivated them to want to do more properties. But they fronted the money on that. We did a 50-50 partnership, and I was responsible for the rent collection, the whole 9 yards. And at the time, I'm picking up rent by hand, like, every first of the month I'm driving over there to pick up rent. So it was a good experience, I guess.
Yeah.
For the first one, as you do more, you start to realize, okay, like you don't have the time to go pick up a rent. You don't have the time to, go over there and show the property every time somebody. It was a good learning experience for me, and I know that when people say, hey, if you get your first property, if you're investing in a market that you live in, right, maybe try your hand at manage it to at least get a feel for it.
Yeah. Got it. Okay, cool. And then when did you just keep doing that then? Was that the goal? So like the first deal went really well, your parents funded it, the cash flow was great, so your parents were like, all right, it's time to double down? Or did you start then talking, did your parents then tell their friends and then they started, how did it go after that?
So it kind of escalated to, hey, they started talking to my grandparents. My grandparents started talking to their friends. My parents' family friends are like, hey, what's real estate and this, that, and the other. And at the time, I'm brokering single family deals too. And so I think people started to take note of, okay, hey, here's this kid's kind of onto something. And that's where it's been easier for me to go out and obtain some private money. So I ended up buying 2 more houses on that same street, and I was knocking on doors. Because I knew the kind of cash flow that I could realize from these properties. And then I think it was the second or third one that I bought. I ended up flipping it because I bought it at a pretty significant discount. I'm like, you know what? Try my hand at flipping. And where that like $8,000 came into play was all my grandparents. They're like, hey, so I got a house. It was like a block down. It was still on the same street. And we paid $22,000 for it. But they're like, hey, you got to pay for the renovations. And I remember like, just before I put on the market, I think I had like $400 left in my checking account. So I kind of burned the boats, if you will, but it ended up, it sold for what we were asking, and I did pretty well on it. So
wow,
it worked out, but it's been a good experience for me.
That's awesome. And then, so what kind of neighborhood was this? Was it a B class, C class neighborhood?
So pretty C class, but I knew the area real well because I went to high school over there, and I go to college there now. It's like a 2-minute drive from the college, and a lot of people we'll look at some of these areas, like especially the near west side of Indy, and they're like, oh my gosh, the place is a war zone. But as a local, I knew the market, I knew the different streets, and I'm like, hey, this isn't a bad little neighborhood.
Yeah.
And so I kind of used my market knowledge or local knowledge, if you will, to my advantage there. And so I'm the same couple streets, and now today I work with a lot of folks out of state who are trying their first time at investing, and I'm able to say, hey, look, I've owned a couple different houses on this street. I bought and sold here. And so that's what I did.
That's awesome. And then, so you started doing that, getting into the single family side, flipping. And then what made you interested? Was it just that back in your head, from Florida, the guy who had that apartment building that made you want to take the jump to the next level of multifamily?
No, I think that, so I just like a lot of people, I'd read the Rich Dad Poor Dad, the whole 9 yards there, but I think that there was some push, and as you probably know now, there's a lot of craze around multifamily.
Yeah.
And I don't remember if there was any one person that kind of sparked my interest, but I started to read up a little bit because I just figured, okay, hey, it's these larger companies that own these apartment complexes. No, like single individual owns these. As I started to learn a little bit more, I'm like, man, there's some guys
there
that make there's some guys that make some serious money doing this. So. Picked up a couple books, started doing the podcast, and I was just for like 12 to probably 16 months straight, it was just podcast, book on multifamily. And that first one kind of came up. I was looking for a while, but I mean, it was a 10 unit for 125 grand with rents at like low fives. So I'm like, okay, this isn't too bad. It's in a C area. So that's kind of how I came into that.
Got it. And then, so did you was that apartment building was in a C neighborhood as well?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then did you sell the properties and then you were just within that 1031 exchange period, or how did
we were selling the single families all at once because I had just sold a flip. So to put it into perspective, I had bought 3 properties on the same street and then another one street over. One of those properties happened to be a flip, and so I was buying these properties for mid to low 20s, and like that one I bought for 28.
Yeah.
I had sold my flip for 45, and they took on a mortgage, so it changed the comps. I'm like, all right, so I put them on at like 48.5.
Yeah. And
some investor from Washington came in and offered cash on on 2 of them. I sold to a different party, and I'm just like, man, this isn't happening. And at the time, like I was just kind of perusing the MLS one night, and I'm like, 10 units, is that 125,000 for 10? That's not right. So like the next day, I went up to this building, and it was a mom and pop owner that was using a mom and pop broker. She priced it like a single family home, and they didn't know any better. And they sold this thing to me for, I think they had it listed for like 130, and I still came in at like 120 or something.
Wow.
And so off of one of those single family homes, we decided to 1031 into
Got it from one of them.
10 unit.
Got
Yep.
it.
And that serviced the down payment and I still had some money left over. So that was just how the timing lined up. Because I know a lot of people have issues with the 1031s.
Yeah.
Identifying time to close. But that I could not have asked for a better scenario. And now we're going to try to sell that 10 unit again, I think, for closer to 250 here soon.
Wow. So tell me about that deal. Was it all one bedroom, one bed? Because it sounds is it a smaller building?
It's a smaller building, 2 stories. It's an older building in a tertiary market. And I've started to have some tertiary markets because my competition isn't as high. And building the rapport with sellers has been a big thing for me. So like this deal specifically, predominantly 1 bedroom, 1 bath. We had some studios in there, but like you said, rents were at low 500s. Some were even into the 4s. And I've been able to go in, raise for the most part up to 5, if not like 475 on the studios, and then implementing bill back. So, just try any way I could to try to reduce the expenses there. It's like I said, it's been a good one to cut my teeth on because it's not a 100-unit building where you're working with on-site and things like that. It's been the perfect multifamily project, if you will.
Got it. And then how did you do any renovations to the units to get that higher rent?
Yeah. So initially I'm like, I manage the single families. I can manage this thing. Well, I mean, the building's about an hour away from where I live, and
Mm,
that turned real quickly into, okay, I can't manage this myself.
yeah,
So I hired third party
good.
just in terms of rent collection, and they were able to, just took time away from what I was doing from a brokerage standpoint or trying to find more opportunities. So I was dealing with, okay, this person's late, and it was
Yeah,
not a good use of my time. So I hired the third party, and then I have some friends of mine who do like single family work, like construction stuff. I'm like, hey guys, would you mind spending a weekend up here and knocking out some of these units? And these units aren't very big, but they were able to go in, take up carpet, paint. We put some new cabinets in these places and turned some of these units around. Kicked out a couple of the older tenants who were not paying, things
yeah,
like that, and where it really came to proving the concept.
got it. Okay,
So
cool. And then how did you get that building financed?
so we went to a small local bank, and it was 25% down. So like I said, that entire 1031 service that. It was a 5-year arm, if you
Yep,
will.
yep,
I mean, just kind of like what you've talked about with some of these other folks on there.
yeah,
I kind of got screwed on the interest rate because going in, I didn't know any better. We're paying 6% on that thing,
yep,
and 25-year AM. So, pretty typical for what you'd find at some of these local banks. But as you start to get a little more well versed in what you're doing, I mean, like on these next two deals, my interest rate a little better. We've got a little better loan to value, and you live and you learn.
yeah.
So
No, that's
not the
fine.
best financing on there, but we had to place the cash. It worked out, and it's
Yeah,
still cash flowing well.
yeah,
But it's not an asset that I want to be in long term. I want to use it as a springboard to
good.
get into a little bit better market.
Yep. And then who signed on the loan? Your parents, family member,
And me,
and you? Okay,
so we
cool.
both did, yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah,
So
because go ahead.
so that's how I've just been structuring everything in the future too, because I'm not doing true syndication,
Yeah,
but it's giving those partners the comfort or trust that, okay, you're signing on the debt too. You still
yeah,
have responsibility.
yep. No, I agree. Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, don't worry about getting screwed over with the interest rate. It happens. I'm paying 6.5% on my 20-unit building because we don't have. So, do your parents have a W-2 or some sort of income?
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's it. That's a beautiful thing because my dad doesn't have a W-2 income, and neither
Okay.
did I. So there was no. We couldn't even go to a local lender, and we would show them our financials. They're like, "Well, your business has all lost money last year." It's like, "Yeah, because I don't want to pay taxes, pal." And then they would say, "Well, you're not making any money in our eyes," and we're like, "All right, well, you don't know how a business runs." So
Yeah.
we weren't able to get financing by anybody except for what was called an asset-based lender. So we're paying six and a half
Okay.
percent, and they quoted us 7.5%. We had to buy down the loan literally to 6.5.
Jeez.
So 6%. I wish I had 6%, but I'm going to do a refinance with. That's a benefit too of going even bigger. I'm
Okay.
not even there yet either, but like once me and you get to $1 million loan minimums, then you can
Yeah.
use Freddie Mac financing, and that doesn't
Yeah.
matter how much you make and all that kind of stuff. So that's
No.
great. So then you said, okay, so you bought that 11 unit, raised the rents on it,
Yeah.
did some small renovations, financed it, and then now you're going to do you're focusing on buying some more apartment buildings and you working on a couple of other deals.
Yeah. So at the moment, we're working on. Well, we were supposed to close Friday, but that's not happening now. If you can imagine that. So
Yeah,
we're pushing back waiting on appraisals on a 19 unit and an 8 unit smaller tertiary market just outside of Indianapolis.
got it.
Like I said, I've found success here because I'm able to go and drive these markets and build the relationships with sellers basically just off of cold calling. I'm not doing the mailers. I'm not. And so it's a very organic fashion in how I'm finding properties, similar to how I'm finding private money, right? Like I'm not going out to people and giving them my 10-second pitch.
Yeah,
So that's kind of what I've been working on, but I have kind of kicked myself in the ass the last couple months because I've been so fixated on multifamily. There's been some single families that have came along that would just be absolute home runs. And I'm like, oh, like I don't buy single family. So
yeah,
literally last night there was a guy who had came to me and said, hey, I have this duplex. And it's in a pretty gentrifying area. And I was like, so I just put that under contract because I was thinking back, to a couple months ago that, man, I really should have picked up some of these other deals. And being an opportunist is just opposed to, oh, I'm strictly multifamily or I'm strictly single family. You can't do that in this business, in my opinion.
yeah,
because like I said, we're entrepreneurs, right?
Yeah.
We're not, this is, you get tunnel vision, and I
Yeah.
think it can really bite you sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah, no, you don't need to flip the house, but you could at least wholesale or put the house under contract or even close on the property and then sell it to a California investor and you manage the project for it. There's a million things that you can do since you're local to the ground, whereas I'm not. But trust me, there's a ton of people in California that are looking to flip houses in Indianapolis. They just
Hmm.
want somebody like you who has the deal, has the contractors,
Uh-huh.
and can make a management fee for doing that. So that's definitely
Yeah.
something that I'd recommend. Yeah. Okay, cool. So tell me about how you've been finding those off-market deals then.
Sure.
Um, the
So
apartments.
I'll go to a market that so this particular market I used to live in, and I'm like, all right, so you get a lot of coastal money or even international money coming into Indianapolis, and I'm like, all right, I can't compete with these guys
Yeah.
because I'm a pretty small fish right now. So I'll drive maybe an hour and a half outside of Indy, and I'll go drive these different markets. I'll get the addresses down. Since I'm a
Yeah.
broker, I have access to realists, and I'll pull the information, and then I'll just cold call them and say, hey, I'm a younger guy looking to get my feet wet to get started in the business, and I think that they take that into account because I think sometimes they think about themselves. I know that you said
Yeah.
you've been having some issues just kind of calling them up, but I'm just like, hey, I'm a local guy. I'm going to X college here. And they're like, oh wow, like I know somebody, and they find it's about finding that connection,
Yeah.
and or hey, I used to live in the market, I know so and so, and that's how I've really been able to come across some of those. And what I found is, some of these owners in these smaller towns don't just have one property. They may have, three or four other ones, and you
Yeah.
start to build that relationship with them, and then they like you. You're true to what you're saying. You're true to your word, and they're able to close on multiple of those things.
Yeah.
But the biggest issue I'm having is the property management in some of these tertiary markets because you have
Yeah.
these mom and pop brokerages who are like, yeah, we do property management. And it's
Yeah.
like really have to vet who you're working with. And my biggest goal is trying to get to a certain cash flow per month to where I can start hiring on employees
Yeah.
and implement my own business or my own management arm, if you will.
Yeah.
It's something I can't do at the moment, and it's something I don't want to do right now until I get to that certain
Yeah.
door count or figure, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. I got you. And then
But
so how have you been pulling the owners list and finding their phone number? How do you go
yep.
about that?
So I'll get on Realist, or I'll search like the county website, pull the property card, and then I'll take that whoever. Typically, if you're in a smaller town, if they're not as sophisticated, they'll have their personal name on there. If not, I'll try to search the LLC name, and I'll type that into maybe like the state website and find out who the principal is, and then just go to Fast People Search, and I'm just on the phones.
Uh-huh.
And it's just been follow up, follow up, follow up. So
Yeah.
it's like I said, it's not something I have systemized just yet, but right now I'm wearing all the hats, right?
Yeah.
I'm the acquisitions guy. I'm capital raising. So finding properties for me is not something where it's like, hey, I got 50 properties in the pipeline. I may have 3 or 4, 5, 6 good ones
Yeah.
that I have. I can text the seller. I can kind of go about it like that.
Love it. Cool. And then how are you going about raising private money? What tools have you used to, if somebody wanted to get started and do what you're doing, let's say they're in a market like Indianapolis and they want to flip houses or whatever, and they don't have parents who have funds, how would you go about
Yep.
raising money?
So everybody knows somebody with money, right? Whether it's a parent, a rich uncle, grandparents,
Yeah.
your neighbor, whoever, right? You gotta. What I found is provide some sort of value to them. If it's, hey, you're great at underwriting or you're great at building relationships. Not everybody has the time to go out and drive properties, but if you're a younger guy like the two of us and you don't have a job just yet, you're still in school,
Yep.
instead of like hanging out and playing Fortnite all day, maybe you can drive or pick up a book, right?
Yeah.
And you start to learn some things to where just a little bit more than the next guy, and you can become dangerous in a good way, right?
Yep.
And so that's what I'd say. Hey, once you have some of those tools from an education standpoint, you can then go to people and say, hey, look, I got this single family house that, it's going to cash flow maybe $500 or $600. I don't know, right? And then you're splitting that up. It doesn't necessarily have to be a 10-unit apartment building. It doesn't have to be a 30-unit apartment building. It could be a single family, but it's proving that concept and proving that you can work with other people and they can trust you with their money. I think that that's a big thing that I learned when I first started is somebody said, hey, here's $20,000. It doesn't matter if it's a parent or a stranger, right? That's
I
a good
agree.
chunk of change for some people. And if you're able to show them respect with that money and that you're able to actually work with it and produce, that gives them more confidence to invest with you, kind of later on down the road.
Yeah. And do you think that the next biggest thing that people are going to say is, he was 19 years old. How the hell did he raise all that money at 19? And I get it all the time too. So how do you think that age was a factor? Do you think that, what do you think still made
Um,
people want to invest with you even though your age?
I think that, um, like I said, if you can go to someone and show them the numbers, and you can, it depends on, like, you can't go to you're in LA, so you can't just go and say, hey, like, we're gonna buy this single family house and it's gonna cash. Like, so it's a little bit tougher if you're not in your market, at least from what I found, but it's right in my backyard, right?
Yeah.
So find something where you can go and you can prove the concept and you can show, hey, here's the numbers, here's what we're gonna spend, even if you take on a mortgage. And there's always going to be somebody out there that's willing to take a risk on you.
Yeah.
I think that if you're somewhat of an upstanding person, you can do okay. But I don't know. There's a lot of shysters out there. So you got to be careful. I mean, I'm not saying go spend your entire life savings on a wholesale course, but
Yeah.
go educate yourself and you'll figure it out. I mean, I know people say find a deal and then find the money. It's not always true.
Yeah.
Get educated and then go find the money.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah. And for me, it was bigger pockets and just meeting with a million people and not even pitching them a deal, but literally just like sharing with them what I've been learning the last 2 years. And it doesn't even matter if you had invest in real estate or not. It's just like, hey, this is what my plan is. Okay, great. How did you think about this? Yeah, this is my plan. And then let's say 2 or 3 months down the line, you call them and be like, hey, remember that plan I told you about? Well, yeah, I'm starting it now. Do you want to do this first deal with me? Here's the number. That's literally what I did.
And I think people will pick up on your character too, right?
Yeah.
So if you're a younger person and you're pretty ambitious and driven, people pick up on that. I'm sure you've seen this at these different conferences and networking events. They're like, dude, you're 22, you're 23, you're 27 years old, you're 30 and you're doing this. I've talked to so many guys who are, they're way down the road and they're like, man, we wish we would have started
At that age.
at half your age, right?
Yeah.
And so I think just even the will to want to go after it and get it done.
Yeah.
They can see that. They see the excitement, and that's something that you can't teach that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. And so after these 2 deals, what's your goal in the next, what's the goal for you in the next 5 years, 10 years? What do you want to be doing? Where are you headed?
So I'm working on kind of structuring and rebranding myself as more of a real estate entrepreneur, similar to what you've done.
Right here, I need to give you one of these, man.
I need one of those shirts.
I'll send one to you. All
right, cool. So I'm working on doing something in terms of like a full circle. I guess the easiest way to explain it would be in the form of like a bar stool, right? So you have your kind of main seat and then 3 legs, if you will.
Okay.
So I want to have like my investing leg, a brokerage leg, and then a property management leg.
Okay.
And I want that to kind of circulate around kind of my business, if you will. That way I have maybe a team of agents underneath me that are doing brokerage. It's another stream of income. I have my investing side where people can come in and do joint ventures, potentially syndication in the future, and then my property management arm. I think that a big thing is if I get into syndication, property management is huge, especially on some of these bigger deals.
Yeah.
And I think that it's a confidence booster and, I don't know, maybe for lack of a better term, a security blanket for investors. So when you go into a deal and say, hey, Zach Hoerth syndication, oh, well, we have a property management company that can come in and stabilize this asset. I think it makes them feel more comfortable than, oh, hey, we're going to go buy 200 units in whatever market and hand it off to, and that's easier said than done. Don't get me wrong. But the whole reason I'm doing joint ventures right now is that, so, hey, if I eventually do want to get into syndication, I can get in front of people and say, hey, I've done X amount of deals. They've ran for full circle. And it's not, oh, hey, I bought into some course and now I'm syndicating a 500 unit complex. It just doesn't happen. Nope. And it's this whole door game that I think is BS. I really don't give a shit how many doors you have. It's about the cash flow that's coming in every month, because you could have some 60-year-old guy that has 50 single family rentals that's making a ton of freaking money on his single families, and he's happy. He's making a ton of money. And you could have the next guy in line who's like, oh, I'm this syndicator who's got, 10,000 doors. nothing against syndicators, but I don't know. For me, it's about that cash flow every month.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you. And I mean, I know a couple of people who are big syndicators, not even big, but let's say they do like
Yeah.
100 to 200 unit buildings. But at the end of the day, when you look at the numbers, it's a group of 5 guys in a general partnership. That general partnership is then 30% of the cash flow of the deal. The other 70% is with the investors. So you split 30% 5 ways. At the end of the day, that $200,000 fee that the GP is making, it's like 30, 40 grand. It's like, Jesus Christ, they're doing all this for 40 grand. You better do a lot of these deals, so I would tell people, don't be discouraged by what a lot of the big guys are doing or saying.
Not at all.
It's split up by, there's a lot of pieces that are taken off of that. Just like a realtor who says they sold $10 million of stuff, they made 1% to 2% of that money, So at the end of the day, when you look at it, so that's why but you're on the right path because I'm going down the same thing you are too. So I bought that 20 unit building last year with my own money, using that as a springboard, same exact word that you said. And so I'll send you I have a case study that I made for that, but I would recommend making one and then using that to even help you fund future deals and stuff like that. If anybody listening wants that, just shoot me a comment below or email me or whatever. But I made a case study literally for that exact reason. So first deal was funded with our own money. Now you have a case study, an example, and those next 2 deals you buy, you make those case studies, and it's like, here's what Zach has done, and here's the new building he has under contract.
Right.
So helps build that rapport.
I'm interested to see that, but one thing that you reminded me of is you talk about holding something that you're just going to hold these properties for however many years and just squeeze the cash flow out of them. And I think with some of the syndicators that you're seeing, not everybody, right, but a lot of these people are working on fees, right? So try to keep the lights on. They're having to turn these properties over, right? So if it's 3 to 5 years, maybe a little shorter, they're like, yeah, let's get rid of this thing because they're taking a fee on the front end, taking a little bit of management fee, and like you said, disposition. I don't know. For me, I think I've had luck in raising money because it's an organic kind of fashion how I'm going about it. It's genuine. I'm not partnering with anybody and everybody out there because there's a ton of money that you can go get, but people are high maintenance, right? I'm not. Yeah. So if you're not working on fees, and that's where I've just had some success. Like, hey, we're partnering up on this thing, and that's where I've been able to get a good amount of equity in some of these properties.
Yep. I completely agree. So how can people get in touch with you if they want to ask you some more questions, maybe about Indianapolis or whatever the case may be? How can people get a hold of you?
Well, you can email me at my dinosaur email since I have my. It's Zach, Z-A-C-H, Hoerth, H-O-E-R-E-T-H @gmail.com. That's probably the best way to reach out to me until I get my website.
No worries.
So that's horrible. I'm still using that thing.
You're fine. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. Thanks for telling us about your story and how you started. And I think it'll help a lot of people, especially because of your age. And there's you may be the youngest person I've had on here. So yeah, thanks again for coming on the show. And I'll make sure that people reach out to you through email.
No, I appreciate you putting out the content. Like I said, I came across him like, who is this guy? This guy's putting out some true stuff. So there's no BS with you, and that's what I like. So I'm glad we could hop on it. We'll have to connect further. So let me know.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, man.
So, anytime, dude. I'll talk to you.